This video is brought to you by Alice is Dead Hearts and Diamonds. Alice is Dead is one of the most famous point-and-click adventure series from back in the heyday of Flash games. It has murder, mystery, investigation, secrets, cryptic messages, weird characters, and a deep, seedy world to uncover. That full trilogy is being remade from scratch, expanded and built on in exciting new ways. Please give that a wishlist over on Steam. That simple action builds so much momentum and helps out immensely. I got involved because it's a game I want to play, so I genuinely hope you guys would want to as well. How's it going, everyone? My name's Graham, and welcome to more Deltarune Easter eggs, secrets, and what have you. This is where things start getting spicy. Now we're moving further away from the more obvious things to be found, some of the surface level secrets, maybe more apparent Easter eggs, simple things like branching dialogue options. This episode will still have some of that. But this is where I started leaning most heavily on your comment suggestions from the previous 5 videos. This is exciting for me. It's mostly going to be stuff I didn't find on my own, and we're going to start pulling on some of the heavily obscure references that Toby Fox laced into this series. Specific things that only the odd person was ever gonna catch. And so I'm thrilled to be talking about some of those now, as well as still the occasional thing that I guess was just easy to miss. In this traffic jam section, other than the obvious characters we can see, we can interact with other cars, but they always say, just looks like a car. Unless you had very specifically acquired that egg from the secret area of Chapter 1. And then the dialogue for this one car changes for one interaction. Looks like a car. There's even a man inside this one. He waves at you happily. After that, all of them go back to simply being looks like a car. In Chapter 1, when inspecting the mirror in the hallway at the opening part of the game, it's only you. With themes of control in this series, and the way that Chris seems to be independent from whoever is controlling them. Whether that's us or someone else, there is a minimum of 2, if not 3 entities involved. And so here, when it's only you, that could potentially be pointing at us, the player. Interacting with the mirror at the start of Chapter 2 instead reads, it's what they call you. Reinforcing the idea of disassociating the body, the player, and possibly that extra soul. In Chapter 1, when inspecting the TV, doesn't seem to even be plugged in anymore. At the start of Chapter 2, the TV looks like it's plugged in, but it's dusty. I think it's legitimately just an error that text is in brackets for one chapter and not the other, seemingly just more foreshadowing about the fact that Chapter 3 is likely going to be a TV world, and we can read into the implications of things being dusty as much as we want, but this may end up being a very dark chapter. The pose Susie is doing in this particular sprite is a reference to the 1969 animation Mr. Osamatsu. It is the shi pose used by the character Iyami. It's something that itself became rather iconic, is a bit of an in-joke or a meme, with the Osusan anime being huge in Japan, and is a nice little reference for players familiar with that series and other traditional forms of anime. Now, I previously showed this extra cutscene that takes place heading down this hallway with all the supplies gathered on your head, but I missed a subpart of that cutscene. Now, I believe if you call Toriel at any point after the school day, this is the dialogue you'll see. Ah, Chris, you're going to do your project? Oh, are you calling to ask for my help? I'll go find our homemade scented glue sticks. Oh, you have a partner this time. Chris, that's wonderful. I hope they like butterscotch scented glue sticks. Calling again, Chris, do not worry about going to the library. If Birdley harasses you about our debt, I will come and throw a smoke bomb so you can escape. Maybe not. Try your best, honey. Birdley informs us that How to Draw Dragons is 2,583 days overdue. How to Draw Dragons is at the bottom of the drawer. The purple character on the cover is dressed immodestly. Your brother will never return this book. But then when you wander into the screen where Alphys and Toriel are having their conversation, you can interrupt it by calling in that moment. Oh, excuse me, I seem to be receiving a phone call? Chris, what is it, honey? What? You made a trash orb? Could you explain what you mean by that? Chris, don't give the phone to me. Oh, you're going to the library later? Well, thank you for telling me this time. Have a nice time. Calling again? Don't worry about the library. Basically the same as we've seen. Can't let Mom find out you're balancing a giant trash orb. We're really insistent on establishing the concept of the trash orb. Upon our second interaction with Caddy's dad in Chapter 1. Can't blame your brother for leaving town. He's out there getting a big brain in the big school. Hope when he becomes a big shot, he remembers us little guys down the street. Now, this could just be a generic phrase. It's a thing to be called a big shot. But considering how far ahead Toby plans these games, and how much he loves foreshadowing and planting teases, I'm very, very curious to see if or how those end up meeting together. When Susie is first being taught how to act, the first option is to have her give a compliment. Her first attempt is maybe a little weak. Hey little guy, I really like the axe in your face. You told Susie to compliment the enemy. Are you serious? What good can I say about someone trying to kill us? Susie, if you're stuck, why not try saying something you wish someone would say to you? You are unbanned from Free Ham Sandwich Day. No one ever said that to me before. And this little gag is paid off in Chapter 2. Speaking to the Rudin Ranger in Castletown, thanks to you, Commander, we've been liberated. I hereby declare today National Ham Sandwich Day of Independence. When Ralsei gives us the manual, we can choose to throw it away. You drop the manual on the floor with a resounding thud. Hey Chris, what are you doing? Oh no, is that the manual? Looks like you accidentally dropped it. Here you go, Chris. You don't want to lose that. You've got the manual again. You then have to throw it out a second time. You toss it again. The pages scatter in the wind. Our low resolution shocked Ralsei. That's okay, Chris. I can always... I'll just make a better one next time. And there, no more manual. If you had insisted on throwing away Ralsei's manual, you get a little garbage can next to your bed. It's a trash can. Here, Chris, in case I make another manual. You can throw it directly in here, right alongside all the shade Ralsei's throwing. When you try to enter the Dark Castle at the beginning of Chapter 1, Ralsei will specifically say that at the end of our adventure we can come back and he'll bake us a yummy cake. At the very end of Chapter 1, Ralsei lets us know that should we ever come back, he'll be sure to bake us some yummy cakes. When you first make it back to the Dark World, and Ralsei sends you to go gather up everything from the closet, if you instead book it to the castle, hell are you going? Trying to have cake without me? And when we do eventually make it into the castle and interact with this cauldron, we finally get to see these long-promised cakes. If you go into Toriel's classroom, the computer wallpaper is updated. It's a picture of your brother and you playing video games. Your brother is using the knockoff controller. Not a reference, but just a very sweet implication. It's such a common joke that the older brother will hoard the real controller or the official controller, and then have the younger sibling either playing without a controller plugged in at all, or at the best, the crappier controller. So it just kind of shows that Asriel cares and what a sweetheart he is. And instead of the apple, some kind of teacher food on the desk, we now have an orange. It's unknown if it's safe for teachers to eat this. Following up learning how to heal, Susie becomes a healing master. Can use ultimate healing. Losers. Susie's ultimate heal that isn't very strong is the best healing and takes a full 100 TP. If you specifically use it in front of an ambulance, Susie cast ultimate heal. That's the worst healing I've seen. Is she charging for that? Good evening, boss. Today's meal is crisped E23D28, which is actually a red color. It's been deep fried with the finest JPEG artifacting, which is a reference to deep fried memes. I hope it suits your palette. Like a color palette. Palette. Great gags all around, just love that interaction. If in chapter 1, up at the top near the water, you do not interact with Onion at all, just totally skip it. Then come chapter 2, we have a special guest visitor instead. Oh, hey, listen up. See that weird circle on the beach? Yesterday I waited on it and something weird came out. Of course it's not yesterday anymore, so too bad. And again, oh hey, when that thing showed up I called it weird. It sunk back into the water. Don't think it's coming back. There's a very interesting little fake out going on here. When this character is closed up, they look specifically like Clam Girl, the character who eventually became a goner and who first teased the inclusion of a character named Susie. But when they open up, they are instead Clam Guy, an NPC we would have seen in the Hotland. Absolutely, that was meant to throw us off. And with my own suspicions that one of the Dark Worlds will be underwater in this area, I'm guessing one, if not both, of the Clam characters will become important. When first jumping down into the castle town, we have all these sparkles that fly off of Chris, then fluttering down into the world and populating it with the Darkners. When we first jump down into this new dark world, one single lone sparkle floats away from Chris. This would actually be Rule's card jumping away from us to go do whatever it is he does with his own time down here. I just like that added detail that it is quickly established and communicated that he does in fact leave as soon as we come down here. This is such a silly little detail and I don't know how I really overlooked it before. Walking into Lancer's room, we always get a splat. But then walking out of Lancer's room, that sound effect plays just in reverse. It's just very satisfying in a weird, disgusting sort of way. At the opening part of this game, if you wander off to the left, we have Mr. Society hanging out by himself. Oh, it's quite a wonderful town, really. Thank you. So, why am I alone here? A bit of self-reflection, I suppose. I do realize I was quite a coward before, so I wanted to say, well, I still am. My cards, I cannot handle society. For now, I'll be living at the top of this cliff. When I'm ready to meet society again, I will be back. Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful home. I will not use it. And away he flies, just floating on up. After Mr. Society flies away, you can then talk to Mr. Elegance about it. Mr. Society left, didn't he? I reckon I knew this wouldn't happen. It's not no fault of yours. He'll be back one day. When Lancer and Rules join up with our inventory, Lancer will say, "Ho, I'm a tough boy. Treat me like one of your items." This is a reference to a line in Earthbound when acquiring the exit mouse. He's a tough boy. You can treat him as one of your items. When inspecting Rules in your menu, you can see his quote is cut off. What we do see is, "Thou gazeth upon a man most handsometh, this daringest genius adoredeth, beyondeth all." Hey! And if you look in the game files, the bit of text that is cut off is, "Hey, let me speaks." He somehow recognizes that what he's saying is overflowing that little text box. When we interact with Lancer, it makes a colored bar appear above Chris and Susie. Now, when we open that menu, it's still there. Interacting with him more than that doesn't change anything. So I really have no idea what to make of that. Then back at the very end of this chapter, after talking to Lancer, they rejoin our items. Huff, puff. There, I got back into your pocket. Now you can use my power. Which just continues to make squashing sound effects. And it also makes these colored bars come back. What is the deal with those? I pointed out before how Queen is showing us the robot face that she eventually plans to give to Noelle. This face also matches a specific emoji that's commonly used as a Twitch reaction. In that final fight, Queen asks chat what happened when her drink ran out. So there is some version of live streaming that exists in this world, maybe not literally Twitch, but it could be that she is planning to design this roboticized Noelle to specifically match the streaming chat seen in this world. I like the animation used of Chris jiggling their body. It feels very Adventure Time-esque to me, although it might not be a specific reference. In an early part of the cyber world, sliding down this ramp, one commenter suggested that maybe it was Osumania. Well, it may be a mildly generic design, it is done to match the music, and so it's not unreasonable to think it is in fact a reference to a specific rhythm game. The tasks are actually secretly talking in binary through their meows. When we see these little speech bubbles, the me is a stand-in for 1 and ow for 0. Convert the me's and ows into 1s and 0s, convert that with UTF-8 text. One of these dialogues is simply spelling out MEOW, and specifically when getting pet, it's spelling out a little heart emoji. How cute! If you interact with the back of this arcade machine, you can't pro-game while facing this direction. At the end of the arcade fight, there is potentially a Homestar reference. Strong Bad has a game, the Strong Bad Zone, that uses the same sort of vector art style, and upon completing this fight against Strong Bad's head, we specifically see his head explode. And here, with the Queen's head exploding, we have a very similar looking head explosion. When you specifically respond to Queen with bosom, we get a quick little blush from Rousey. I've pretty consistently been calling this guy Newbert. That's just kind of how it looks like it would be said, and also, I don't know, he's a new character. It's been pointed out that he's probably specifically meant to be Nubbert, like Nubbert, because he is a little nub. Most likely meant to be one of these little things that used to be present on old keyboards. That was specifically referred to as a nub. Some have suggested that maybe he's meant to be a reference to Humphrey from Amori, and yeah, Toby did contribute to that game, and its release was a pretty big deal. So there's a slight chance, but they do feel different enough to me. This little dancing figure that pops up as a little advertisement, whatever it would be, is a horned figure that does look quite reminiscent of the trolls seen in Homestuck, but maybe it's meant to be a reference to the Jamiroquai logo, and one of the poses seems to maybe specifically be referencing the Virgin Walk. So I don't know if all this is a reference or any of it. I mean, we even have a horned character standing right next to us, so it doesn't necessarily prove anything. Now, the Virokun is meant to be like a computer virus, but the name is instead a specific reference to the Pico-Pico-Kun from Mega Man 2. Their overall pinkish color palette, and the way they shoot these pairs of attacks towards one another so that they collide in the middle, are also tied in specifically to how that Mega Man enemy was presented and attacked. And they have this other attack that's obviously a Space Invaders reference. One of the possible lines of dialogue coming from this character is, "I've got a love letter for you." Tying in this virus theme, this is referencing the infamous "I love you" virus seen in the early 2000s, where this message was sent to Windows users. And obviously with them wishing us a Happy New Year 1997, we can't not think of Spamton, and the significance that year has been given elsewhere in this chapter. When we use Take Care X, we have a brief swap to all three of our characters, dressing like doctors. Chris is offering up hot chocolate, a favorite treat of theirs that they have a special sentimental connection to. Susie opts for a giant stabby needle, makes sense seeing how much she loves spiky things, and Rousey bakes a cake as we know he loves to do. I love the detail of these Mercied Virvirocun's little antennae turning to hearts and their spear turning to a peace sign. If you acquire all 3 blue checkmarks without ever having introduced yourself to Hacker, wow, I'm the Hacker and you found all 3 checkmarks. Maybe our cyber paths will cyber cross once more in Queen's Mansion. In the meantime, let me show you the power of the blue checkmarks. And he still puts on his firework display for us. While not specifically confirmed, it's been speculated that Sweet's design is a possible nod to the Noise Master from Cucumber Quest, a webcomic for which Toby composed music. During this dance fight for one of the attacks, the character's pose is referencing a meme music video, Danjo. They replicate the dance move seen during the chorus. Apparently, when translated, the song is about school bus seating arrangements. Now, normally to complete this fight, we need Chris to be able to act and dance or use Dance X to have everyone dancing at once. But if you do manage to allow Chris to be downed, Chris, hey Chris, the hell do we do now? We can't act if Chris is down. Don't worry, Susie, I'll just heal them and... Hey, wait, why can't we act without Chris? Because that's Chris's unique talent. So, you think I'm too stupid to dance by myself? Susie learned S action. She can act from her magic menu. Susie, I don't think you should... Happy feet, dumbass! Susie made Ralsei learn R action even though he didn't want to. I'm sorry, Chris. Happy feet itself is its own thing. But because of all the gamer memes and references and the fact that Susie herself appears to be a gamer, this could potentially be referencing the famous Wombo Combo Smash video.
Happy feet, Wombo Combo!
Which feels extra likely because of the other Smash Bros. References seen throughout the game. And at the end, when we see all the characters dancing together, Chris is actually still downed. They just kind of get spun around in the circle with everyone else, not participating at all. With this eye puzzle, when we toggle a glass bridge to walk across, it's seemingly a one-time use, but we actually see these glass panels at least one other time, just not quite in the same way. If you race ahead on the conveyor belt and abandon Susie and Ralsei, and then specifically cut across to the top, they will be dragged along the conveyor belt and skip across this corner to catch up with you. In the process of doing so, the game kind of creates these previously hidden glass tiles. Back in Chapter 1, we have these eyeball symbols on the wall. It's not anything you can interact with, and in a previous episode, I acknowledged the way they connect to the Yuminiki fan game .flow, which is also where the whole potassium thing comes from. But we again see these eyeballs when Ralsei is describing the Titans. Something that is probably going to be a major part of this series, being teased right from the opening moments of the first Dark World. While we're back on the subject of .flow, I do now finally know where the whole potassium joke in that game came from. It's a joke surrounding the game, not something actually found in the game. There is an NPC in that game who is nicknamed Smile, something of a recurring motif in the Deltarune and Undertale series. At one point, Smile has a direct voice line in the game. What they're saying is, "You're a sick girl, but I'll see you again."
You'll sink here, potassium again.
However, there is a relatively heavy accent delivering that line, and "but I'll see you again" really starts to run together. But I'll see you again, but I'll see you again, but I'll see you again, potassium, potassium, potassium.
You'll sink here, potassium again.
That first part is up for debate. I've seen "you sick girl," "you'll see girl," "you're safe here," "you'll sink in here." There's a lot of suggestions. I don't think there's ever been a real answer.
You'll sink here, potassium again.
So there, now we know the specific details of where potassium actually comes from in that game, and tied it together to the idea of smiles. When the queen turns on the high beams, she basically creates her own bat signal. The reference isn't any deeper than that. just is the Queen signal. Now, the spinning red floppy disk isn't something I had specifically made a connection to. Shall I help you save? No, I shan't. I haven't the faintest idea what that is. This little character is most likely a reference to Cave Story, a very influential indie game, and one in which you would save by interacting with spinning red floppy disks. The pose Birdley makes when he gets blasted off from his failing coaster is almost identical to the death sprite seen from Sonic in early the Hedgehog games. That's such a strange way to say it. I thought I'd feel more natural than saying Sonic twice so close together, but no, it was definitely worse. Trashy is a hyperactive, googly-eyed weirdo that nobody wants. One who specifically tries to give you relatively unnecessary tooltips. And with the naming convention of being Object-y, the character all around is likely a reference to Clippy, seen in old versions of Microsoft Word, really tying together this whole theme of early computer technology and internet. Birdley crushing his smart scouter out of frustration is yet another one of those things that's meant to make us think of Dragon Ball Z. Those Saiyans always crushing their scouters. There is extra dialogue from Birdley in this fight if you chase away his minions with the Sleep Mist. That's right, Chris. Unlike you, I have a loving team behind me. And you'll never beat us fighting alone. Hey, wait. Where'd the other guys go? My allies are gone? Ha! They're probably just helping Queen. Search for me. Shut up, Chris. Shut up. I don't care if you're not saying anything. Checking on Lancer after the second Birdley fight, the Bluebird of Crappiness. Fly high, Bluebird. Fly high. People have pitched me many different things this is in reference to. I don't think it's actually in reference to any of those specific things. It's instead just a play on a common phrase. Bluebirds are seen as a symbol of peace and happiness in many cultures. The idiom Bluebird of Happiness became more popular through the 1934 song performed by Jan Pearce. It existed well before that. It's something that's been played off of many times since. So here, the Bluebird of Crappiness and the soundtrack song Bluebird of Misfortune are both references to this concept and general phrase. The dialogue in the scene where Queen comes looking for Noelle and brings a battery acid pie is a reference to Earthbound, where Paula's dad in Tucson will come looking for Paula with an apple pie. Polly? Where are you? It's time for a yummy piece of pie. Maybe there's a different scene that matches a little more exactly? This is the best I could find. Maybe someone could help me out if there's more to it. This could also be a twofold reference. We know Toby was involved in the music for the Homestuck series. So maybe the appearance, the idea, the gag here is also intended to look like a soapboard pie from that series. Birdley even baked a gamer's delight that looks the exact same. As we work together with Noelle, slowly spelling out December, she ends up behind these columns and overpasses at various points, telling stories of her sister's deaths and growing up. Going under this overpass, she very briefly becomes the outline of a childlike Noelle, fully leaning into that nostalgic moment. I love the little detail here that Asriel's sleeves smell like cinnamon, as do seemingly all things related to the Dreamer family. In the bottom right-hand corner of Toriel's classroom, we have the Throne of Gods. Just a big old stack of chairs. And in the mansion of Chapter 2, just past the room with all the cloches, the Supreme Table. You won't be able to use this without the Throne of the Gods. I don't know why people are stacking all these things together, but it's interesting that it's tying together something from a different room of the school, especially when we're not currently in the school at all. Bear with me here for about 2 minutes while I go a hair more speculative than I normally do in these videos. Anytime I do this, I try to tuck it at the back of the video after covering the facts. The most interesting aspect of this room is that everything we're seeing is essentially Chris and Asriel's room they share in the overworld, but a mirror image where then Chris's half of the room is removed entirely and Chris instead takes over Asriel's, having a cleaner, tidier space filled with trophies and achievements, and then the side that normally would have been Chris's is partially incomplete. There's exposed floorboards and nothing really over there. I don't know how to read into that exactly. Maybe it's Toby just reusing assets, but it seems a little too much of a one-to-one to have not been intentional. It could be intended to show that Chris has no real identity of their own. Maybe Ralsei had to design the room around Asriel's personality profile because Chris is really lacking one. I personally think Ralsei being an anagram of Asriel is a bit of a red herring. Toby knew people would go looking for that. But if that is significant, then Ralsei may have designed this room, pulling from some sort of shared memories where he only remembered Asriel's side. Or maybe it's the result of some secret unspoken desire that Chris envies Asriel and his accomplishments. We can see that Susie's room also has the half-finished sort of aesthetic, so maybe I'm reading into that part too much, but I'll be so damn curious to see if the rest of this is building to something. Thank you all so much for watching. It takes a lot of time to comb through thousands of comments. No wonder YouTubers eventually give up on that. But I really don't think I'd be able to put together this video without everyone's help. So thank you all for commenting and sharing. There's enough for at least one more video. I don't know how many times I've said that at this point. I've got some more exciting things cooking up for this December, so keep an eye out for some non-Deltarune content, because I think some of the stuff I have coming up is some of my favorites that I've ever done. Thank you to the ongoing support of our patrons. Consider checking that out. I'm trying to do new things over there to make it feel worthwhile, and I hope to see you all again soon.